The world is a big place, but with the internet, it's brought everyone closer.
Senator Jarrett Barrios, the chair of the Committee on Homeland Security and Public Safety, has taken an interest in informing the public about internet safety. Please explain to me just what the Committee of Public Safety and Homeland Security does.
Sure. I am the Senate Chairman of the Joint Committee on Public Safety and Homeland Security. So there's a House Chair and a Senate Chair. The House Chair is a woman named Cheryl Rivera from Springfield. And I am the person in the Senate.
Is that why you took up this cause? I mean, I noticed you have a MySpace page, which is very progressive, especially for young people who may be going on MySpace, doing their chatting, meeting people, but not really sure who's behind the computer, behind the keyboard as well. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, it's interesting. I became very interested in sort of internet safety and security, in particular among kids, because kids are sadly for adults, much more likely to use the internet. The internet is now the place where many kids do their socializing. They do their instant messaging, the IMs, they do all these sorts of things on the internet. And so then the question comes about safety. I was briefed by some students in Everett, which is in my district, about the importance of school safety, kids who were dealing with the issue of bullying. And as I became interested in this and worked and developed legislation on bullying, one of the things that became apparent is bullying isn't just shoving some kid into the locker after class. A very common form of bullying in 2007 is what's known as cyberbullying, which is to say bullying over the internet. Now, how can somebody bully you over the internet? Well, go to MySpace and you'll see. Where you have is, for example, where a number of kids are part of a certain social network, a lot of kids from the same school, for example. Some child has a MySpace page, they put their photo on the MySpace page, that gets taken by another kid and then doctored up to make it look like, the head gets put on the body of a cow or something, and kids write all sorts of nasty, mean things like that. Equivalent to the kind of nasty note in school that gets passed around, but now it's up on the internet for the whole world to see. A lot of parents don't even understand what MySpace is, so that you can make sure that while your child is on the internet, that they're practicing the safest possible practices to prevent cyberbullying and to keep their identities safe as well. Because, of course, the other issue, separate from violence on the internet or opportunities to commit violence against your child on the internet, the issue of internet safety deals with your financial safety, your sort of personal information getting out there. When you're on the web, a lot of these websites will ask you questions, and children don't necessarily know, I shouldn't give my social security number, I shouldn't give my birthday, if you don't know who it is you're giving it to. Because in giving somebody that information, there might be some sort of viral advertisement, it might be some other mechanism, some other reason they're asking for it, but once they've captured your info, they can do whatever they want with it. And then your child or your family will realize next time you're trying to refinance your house or what have you, you're applying for a college loan for your child when they're going to college, that they've got no credit, or their credit's been completely ruined because of this unwitting circumstance. So I'd like to go through some of the safety tips, and my MySpace page lists these. Obviously, as I've said, don't give people who you don't know or a website that you're not familiar with your information, and only give them, if you're buying something, for example, on the internet, you don't need to give your social security number. You never do. So don't do it. In addition, the other sort of something personal, it's hard to think of something more personal than a picture of you. And when your children go online and on their MySpace page listing a picture, think about the consequences of what putting your picture up, what can be done to your picture if somebody else downloads that and wants to, for example, graffiti it. Or if it's an internet predator, somebody who is looking for kids on the internet, if they have a picture of your child as opposed to just some name. The other associated fact is don't necessarily give all your specifics. Don't list your full name and your address. If you're known as Johnny, put Johnny, not John Jose Rodriguez. Don't give the sort of information which would give information about the specific data to help somebody who might not have good intentions find you or your child.
That's an interesting point you bring up, because we've read several stories about, in several instances of children who have been victims of sexual predators online, and people who, seemingly meet these nice people online. They meet them in locations, and it turns out the person's stalking them or anything like that, or try to do worse things to them. What can parents do to sort of, monitor that with their children? Because unfortunately, like you mentioned, the kids are a lot more savvy than some of the parents, particularly when it comes to computers.
One of the things that you can do on MySpace and I believe on some of these other websites, Friendster, I believe as well, is you actually can have a function. First of all, a child who's under 14 is not allowed to use it. Okay? Now, MySpace doesn't do a good job at tracking that.
When they lie.
But because the kid's lying, how do you enforce that? But as a parent, you should know that there's a reason for that, and you might want to consider not letting your child do Friendster or MySpace. So one of the important things that you can do on the internet, on Friendster, on MySpace, is when your child sets up their account, it can be set up in such a way that the parent knows where your child has been on the internet. And then to kids, it sounds stupid, but just like you say, don't talk to strangers. You don't talk to strangers on the internet if you don't know who they are. Now, yeah, you might have read their MySpace page, but consider this. Do you really think that person's necessarily 15 years old, goes to this other school that you've never been to, and that their name is Bobby Sue Jones? It could be some really bad person with that as their fake profile to become close to you and then try to get you to come to a meeting. And if you are going to meet somebody on the internet, and this goes for adults as well as kids, don't do it at a private establishment. Do it in a place that's public. A restaurant, a coffee house where there are lots of people around you. Know where the exits are. Know that if you need to call the police or what have you, that you can call for help and not be taken off very quickly and quietly without the ability to protest and sort of protect yourself. These are all, it might seem like obvious tips to people, but as sophisticated as some people, parents and kids, can be around traditional forms of self-protection, people will oftentimes just ignore those basic things in the context of protection on the internet. People don't think to take the same precautions. People put up all sorts of personal information about themselves, which somebody with a sexual predator or a financial identity thief can avail themselves of and put you or your family at risk. It's sort of basic common sense protections, I think, applied to the internet. Some of those really ultimately call for good common sense, and I'm afraid that some of them are going to require that parents have to learn enough about the internet to know what their kids are doing. That you can't just let your kid go if you really want to know that they're not going to be putting themselves in harm's way.
Absolutely. It's the wild, wild west out there, and parents should be on top of that. But not only parents should be on top of their children, but they should also be on top of what they're doing online as well. It's particularly with, I see on your MySpace page you listed, phishing scams. Talk to us a little bit about phishing scams, because that's something that a lot of people don't really know about and might be duped into doing really, really easily.
Right. There's a lot of problems. One of the areas that I've been very involved in has been the area of identity theft. There are lots of forms of identity theft, some less serious. Interestingly, this TJX scandal with TJ Maxx isn't nearly as serious as some other forms of identity theft, because the majority of the information that was compromised were credit card numbers. You can cancel your credit card and you have certain federal protections so that you don't actually owe any money as long as you report the loss. Something like a phishing scandal, and by phishing I don't mean the kind of thing that you go do with a fishing rod. Phishing is spelled Phishing, phishing with a PH. A phishing scandal is, for example, you'll get emails, and I get these all the time. We think of them as spam. A bank sends you an email. Maybe it's your own bank. Maybe it's a bank that you don't have an account at. Just want to confirm before we give you this new line of credit, you're following numbers, and they'll send you something. Could you reply, please, with your correct name, birthday, and social security number, right? Or in some cases, your correct bank routing number, the number at the bottom of your check. So you give them that information, and then of course those people go around and can access your credit through your checking account, or with your social security number can open a new credit card without you even knowing, because you unwittingly gave them this information. I think it's, as ridiculous as it seems, because it's so cheap for these thieves to do it. It costs them nothing to send out these emails, right? And so you see them kind of proliferating across the internet. At the beginning, a lot of people were sucked in, and even today, people fall victim to these scandals. Do not send any of that information to the internet. And if it looks like it's your bank that's doing it, please understand your bank isn't doing it. Your bank does not ask you to give that sort of information. No bank does, because it would put them at liability if that information were lost. So if you have a question and you think it might be your bank, call your bank on the phone and ask them.
You also have a weblog now, what they call blog for people who don't know, but a blog online right now where you sort of use it as a forum to just talk about things, discuss different issues. Talk to us a little bit about the
Well,
weblog.
I launched it a couple weeks ago. My first subject was on the area of domestic violence. By the way, you can get to the blog by www.senatorbarrios.org. That's my official website, and you can get to the blog from the website.
Senator Barrios, I'd like to thank you very much for your time and for being on the show. Gotta add me as a friend on MySpace.
Okay, absolutely.